My name is Bolo, and I've been working at Sports Spaceman Redwood City since September 2019. One of the things I really love about working at Sports Spaceman is that they allow me the time to take off and experience the outdoors, to use the equipment that we sell and rent. I recently bought an SUV, equipped it with a Thule Motion XT cargo box, and set off to visit the 5 national parks in Utah. My first stop was Zion National Park. I was lucky enough to get my name chosen from a lottery that allowed me to get a permit to walk the 4.2-mile hike up to the very top of Angel's Landing. The icy conditions and the sheer drop-off was not for the faint of heart, but the view from the top was spectacular. The very next day, the conditions on the Virgin River were excellent. So I went out to a local outfitter and I rented equipment so that I could wade back and forth along the Narrows Trail all the way down to a point called Wall Street and back, which was about 10 miles round trip. 72 miles northeast of Zion is Bryce Canyon National Park. Being in the park in early spring with the red rock hoodoos against the snowy background was really special. On a sunny day after a snowstorm had brought a foot of snow the night before, I threw on my snowshoes and hiked the rim trail overlooking the amphitheater. The views were otherworldly. Continuing in a northeast direction for 112 miles, I arrived at Capitol Reef National Park. The highlights of that visit was a hike on the Cassidy Arch Trail, which gave really nice views of the canyon along the slick rock. And at the very end, the view of the natural arch and the canyon walls were amazing. On another day, while I was still at Capitol Reef, I linked the Cohab Canyon Trail, the Fremont River Trail, and the Hickman Bridge Trail to make one long hike. There were views of the town of Fruita, slot canyons, and at the very end, the 133-foot natural bridge. I continued east and ended up in the town of Moab, where I stayed for a week while I visited the national parks of Canyonlands and Arches. On my first 2 days while visiting Canyonlands National Park, I just basically drove from one vista point to the other, parking my car and just doing short hikes to the rim and seeing spectacular views of the canyon below. At Canyonlands, I decided to inquire at the visitor center to see if they had any wilderness permits available. And luckily that same day they had one available that allowed me to hike down the Murphy Hogback Trail down this really steep canyon wall down to the mesa below. As you can see, there was snowing at the top, but the weather while I was at the mesa was really nice, and I was able to spend a super quiet full moon night all by myself. For this overnight wilderness hike, I had my Osprey Ether 70-liter backpack, my Marmot Tungsten one-person ultralight tent, my Thermarest Z-Lite sleeping pad, and I also had my Mountain Hardwear Ratio 15 to keep me nice and toasty on a night that had gotten below 20 degrees. While in Moab, I was able to visit the National Park Service office, and I asked if they had any wilderness permits available. And to my surprise, they had one available for that very night that allowed me to hike into the national park and stay at a place called Devil's Garden, which has some really spectacular geological formations. The following day, I did another backcountry hike. This one was at Courthouse Wash, which was a 12-mile out and back. And on my last day, I visited the iconic Delicate Arch and also passed by some petroglyphs. The national parks in Utah receive millions of visitors each year. So if you expect to find a campsite within the park boundaries, it's probably a good idea for you to book well in advance. For me, this trip was very impromptu. So I was lucky enough just to get a campsite at Bryce Canyon, but at the other national parks, I had to go outside the parks to stay overnight. On my route back home to the Bay Area, I stopped at Monument Valley, Horseshoe Bend, and Death Valley. This solo trip was an incredible experience. So if you're like me and you really enjoy being outdoors and you want to witness Mother Nature's creativity at its very finest, go ahead and plan your own trip to Utah. The scenery and the beauty over there will just blow you away.